MIG Welding for Beginners Part 3. For this entire series I'm using this really excellent Clark welder. It's a 240 amp welder, which is very powerful. I'm using it at nowhere near 240 amps. In this video I'm using the 100 amp setting, which is plenty for the thickness of metal that I'm welding. Later on in the series, when I finally learn how to weld to a respectable standard, I'll turn the welder up to 240 amps and see what happens. Throughout this video I'll be wearing a Clark solar-powered head shield, and this clip shows what the camera sees when it looks through it. The screen of the visor only darkens when you start welding. It's really clever. A quick health and safety warning: during this video you will actually see the welding arc from the MIG welder. Always wear the suitable eye protection for the job. So what have we here? These are my first attempts, and they are really poor. I don't think they're any worse than anyone else's first attempts. I even managed to stick the tip to the actual steel plate and damage the shroud. There are some common problems with these welds. A lot of them have got big holes in them. This is the pigeon dropping school of welding. My friend Bob Brockleurst owns Pugney's light railway in Wakefield. Here are some clips that I did a while back when I went to visit. If you look closely at the turntable, for instance, you'll see quite a lot of welding. There's welding on the track, welding on the passenger trucks, and that's really the reason I need to know how to weld. I fabricate using silver soldering and nuts and bolts, but welding is something I've always found difficult, partly due to my inexperience and the fact that the previous welder I had wasn't so good. So today, Thursday the 10th of December 2020, Bob Brockleurst and myself are in the workshop. We are socially distancing. I'm not going near him at all. The camera's on a tripod and I'm using a telephoto lens. This is Bob operating the welder. The first thing he did was check the feed on a piece of scrap metal. I had the feed on number 5, sort of in the middle. He set it to number 6. The current is set to 100 amps. When I welded the tip and the shroud together, I had to replace the tip and grind some metal off the end of the shroud. So really the shroud is a bit short, or the tip is a bit long. And in this clip, if you look at the shroud, you'll see that Bob's pulled it out a little bit. I used this kind of stuff on my previous welder, so we thought, well, we'll try it on this one. Time for another go. What about the gas pressure? Bob turned down the gas pressure into the yellow, but I turned it back up when I had a go. That's because Bob's had a bit of experience of welding and he keeps the torch very close to the work. Here the rim of the shroud is actually touching the steel. Today I really did learn something. I always wondered why box section had rounded edges, and one reason for that is when you put two pieces together you have a channel in which to weld. Plus it makes the steel easier to handle. The last thing you want is a sharp edge. I really was tempted to cheat in this video and say that this was me welding, but I thought better of that. This is Bob doing the welding. These two pieces of box section are firmly held in the vise, but Bob's demonstrating the fact that you normally have to tack things together before you fully weld them. And in this clip he's now working his way from right to left. This seems to be the traditional way of doing it. I tried it the other way round, going from left to right. It seemed to work, but it felt wrong somehow. I have a few friends in the engineering business, and once the pestilence lockdown restrictions are lifted, I intend to visit them and show welding from a professional level. I watched a few YouTube videos about welding, and what put me off them was the person usually showing how to weld was a professional welder, and too much was assumed that the beginner can't possibly know, including me because I'm useless at it. Right, this is Bob's weld, and that looks okay. It's not perfect. Bob is not a professional welder, but it's perfectly adequate. It's traditional to clean up the welded area using an angle grinder, so here I'm doing just that, to have a look at what the weld is really like. And it's pretty good. There's plenty of penetration, which is what you need. I will omit the girlfriend joke in this instance. So now it's my turn. We've turned the pieces of box section over in the vise, and I'm going to do the same as Bob. And my attempt outlines quite a serious problem. The idea is to weld in the gap, but I can't steer the torch properly.
Well, just stop there, please.
Bob told me to stop because he could see what was happening. I kept moving the torch away from the work, and that's not a good thing with MIG welding. So here is take 2. and if you listen to the noise, it's not right. Bob is advising me as we go along.
Don't make big movements.
In case you didn't hear that, he said, don't make such big movements. But what I'm really doing is moving away from the work all the time and leaving too big a gap from the torch to where it's welding. And look at the result. It's not as bad as my first attempts, but it's not good. I'll try again.
That sounds right, but it goes vroom, 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 vroom. That's burning back to the tip.
Bob explained that because I'd turned down the speed of the wire feed, it was burning back to the tip and making a strange noise. And once again, I'm getting very close to the pigeon dropping school of welding. Then the penny started to drop. Here you see me welding again. I've turned the wire feed back up to 7, and immediately the sound is very different. It's got a sort of Frankenstein's laboratory electrical arc sound, and this I think is what you need, not a horrible crackling noise. When it's making this sound, it's depositing the metal much more evenly, and the joint gets a lot hotter. Look how it's glowing, and this glow illuminates the area of where you're welding so you can see where you're going. Once again, this is a clip of Bob's welding, and this is a clip of mine. I'm not entirely stupid. I even have a cycling proficiency test, and I once won a colouring competition. This is a skill that I think is going to need a lot of practice, or in my case, not that much practice because I pick things up very quickly. My friend Bob's approach to welding and the instructions he was giving me seemed very logical. Here we turned over the 2 pieces of box section in the vise, and as you can see, I'm starting to improve. I was a bit puzzled why my weld was much deeper and sat on top of the metal, and Bob explained that when he was welding 2 pieces of box section, and the weld was in the groove in between, formed by the rounded corners. I'm still holding the torch too far away from the work, I think. I have turned the gas pressure up slightly, and it seems to work, but it's not right yet. It'll be a while before I can do this properly. And I can say with confidence that the problem is entirely my problem. There's nothing wrong with the equipment. This welder is superb. In the next episode, I'm going to attempt to join a piece of metal that's stood vertically onto a horizontal piece, using a very useful welding tool for holding the steel at 90 degrees. I'm not going to put too many instances in each episode. I'm going to take it nice and steady. So that's it for this one. Stay healthy, thanks for watching, and I hope you found it useful. Please take the time to visit my Mainsteam Models website and click on the section of the website that says Video Playlists. And by doing that, you can find other videos that you may like to watch. And by using the playlists, you can actually watch the videos back to back.